took a moment to stop by my office to look over the coroner's report. Reading those chicken scratches was like deciphering the Enigma machine. I could sound it out, but that didn't get me any closer to understanding. Fortunately, I knew a translator. If ever a man was a living parable, it was Cornelius Jacobi. The world was given to him on a silver plate, but he turned it down because it wasn't gold. He kept reaching higher and higher, never grabbing anything because he wanted something better. But he reached too high and lost his balance. Without a handhold, Jacobi fell far. Left with nothing else, Jacobi works in less than legal fields using that fancy education of his to mix drugs for the lowlifes he used to step on. I met with Jacobi at San Pedro Park. After our customary exchange of threats, I handed over the report to translate. What's the scoop, Jacobi? Anything strange you think I should know about?
You said Hans was killed by gunshot?
So they told me.
Well, then they lied. This lists the cause of death as acute pulmonary edema.
That's what I read. But that makes about as much sense to me as a sober barfly.
It means he died from excess fluid in the lungs.
Is that right? How does that happen?
Could be related to his heart, pneumonia, certain toxins, or trauma.
Trauma? You mean like a bullet hole?
Yes, but Hans wasn't shot in the chest. He was shot cleanly through his left side. No organs were hit. A few stitches and he'd have been fine.
You said certain toxins. Any chance one of those toxins is nitrogen dioxide?
Sure, but how'd a guy like you think to ask about nitrogen dioxide?
Well, maybe I'm just smarter than you think, Jacobi.
Can't be.
Alright, wise guy. Let's just say I'm following a lead. Any reason why Hans would be the only one to die when a whole group of folk are breathing the same air?
Could be any number of reasons, Foley. I don't know enough about the circumstances to even hazard a guess. But for nitrogen dioxide to cause pulmonary edema, the subject will need to be exposed to a high concentration in a short time.
Well, what about a low concentration over a long time?
Could be, but then it wouldn't be acute. It'd be gradual.
Might have said more, but Sheriff Oakley showed up making Jacobi antsy. He got quiet real quick and left faster than a cat lapping chain lightning. Just as well, because Oakley made a beeline for me once he spied me. The fire in Oakley's eyes was hot enough to cook a goose, and I knew that mine would be if I stuck around with the stolen report. So I started off in the opposite direction, pretending I hadn't seen him. When he started yelling, I kept my head down. When he started running, I gave him the slip by taking a sharp turn on O'Farrell Street. He'd find me. I could consider that a promise, and the longer it took, the worse it'd be for me. But I had a few more things I wanted to do before spending the night in a can, so I took a cab down to West 10th Street and jumped a wall to find the palace Morpheus Wiley called home. His tidy schedule couldn't be made to fit mine, so I decided to force a few square pegs into round holes to expedite matters. He wasn't home, so I thought, and that worked just fine for me. His car would do some talking without him, so I skirted round to his garage to find it. If what I'd been told was true, Hans and Dabney had had their scuffle with the car between them, so it wasn't any reach at all to guess it had a few scars to remember him by. A man as wealthy as Wiley would never be seen in a car with a single scratch, so that fancy new Tucker torpedo was left behind till it could be fixed. As I took a gander at the slick ride, I saw my gamble paid off. 2 bullet holes marked the passenger window. That added up. Dabney had been trying to pull Wiley out of the car when Hans caught his attention. The open door must have been between them when they started shooting. Dabney would have been on the inside of the door by Wiley. He shot with his right hand and hit Hans in his left side. Hans also shot with his right hand and hit Dabney on his left shoulder. That means from the outside of the door, the right hole was Hans' bullet, and the left was Dabney's. The spider web of glass was enough to tell the story plain. The web on the left ended in the web on the right. That can only happen if the hole on the right was made before the one on the left. Looks like Dabney's story checks out. Hans shot first. Before I could make any other discoveries, Lady Luck showed me she's nothing if not fair. My investigation ended with a cold piece pressing against my temple. It was Wiley. He wasn't out like I thought and had heard me snooping. I could do nothing but raise my hands as he told me the police were on their way. Looks like I'd be talking to Oakley today after all.
Who do you think you are breaking into my garage like this?
Easy now, easy. I was hired to look into the man who attacked you the other day. The man on Pier 300.
Yeah? Why's that? He's locked up for murder.
My client thinks there's more to the story.
And who is your client? Terry? Gully? I told her to drop it.
Why is that? You were attacked, weren't you?
Don't pretend you're here out of concern for me. You're here to earn your keep.
Sure. I'm here because I took the job. But the one offering the job cares. Why don't you?
I have my own people to deal with gun cells like Dabney.
People like Hans?
Who?
Hans. Bubby. The guy who came to your defense and shot Dabney.
That man never worked for me.
Word is he did. To be honest, how the story plays out, it makes more than a mite of sense that he's your gorilla.
You can say whatever you like. That doesn't make it true. I never hired him. I never even saw him before. But why am I even talking to you? I don't owe you an answer.
He held me at the end of a barrel till Oakley showed up. The sheriff didn't let me speak, but hauled me off like a pile of junk. I had the foresight to ditch the coroner's report, so he had nothing but trespassing to charge me with. He wasn't dumb enough to be fooled, of course, but couldn't bend the law enough to keep me for that long. Dabney had just been sent off to the big house, so I was made the new tenant of his old room. As much of a drawback this was, every coin had two sides, so I started dropping eaves wherever I could. Turns out my mouth served me better than my ears. A lot of the officers knew me by reputation. They knew I'd known Oakley before he was a straight-line sheriff. I had stories, more than a few of our army days fighting the Fritz. I'm sure Oakley told them not to spill a bean, but with a promise of a humiliating story, they were all flapping their lips. One of them, by the name of Kirby, was especially chatty. He didn't know much that I hadn't already learned, but proved to be more useful than either of us could have guessed.
Say, how do you and the sheriff end up on opposite sides of the bar, Foley?
Different means will make enemies quicker than different ends.
Well, did you do it? Did you really steal the coroner's report just because the sheriff wouldn't talk?
Think I'll slip? I'm not admitting anything.
Well, who else would steal Hans's report?
Nobody ever steal anything strange before? Sometimes people don't even know what they're after. They just want to steal something.
Say, you're right about that. A couple weeks back, someone stole some acid from an etcher. Probably the cheapest thing he could have stolen. There was, gold and stuff around. Bet he was kicking himself pretty hard when he saw what he nabbed.
Acid. You know what kind?
Huh? No, I don't remember.
Could you check?
Well, sure, if you really want. Let me get the file. Yeah, here it is. Looks like it was nitric acid. Why? That means something to you?
Any copper nicked with that acid?
Yeah, but just a few ounces. Say, how do you know that?
I didn't answer. My mind was racing faster than the Zephyr and just as far. I had to get out from behind those bars. I had to derail this ride before it went terminal again. But Oakley ensured I stayed the night. As soon as Oakley opened the jail door, I shot out of there and made for Terminal Island, hoping I wasn't too late.